Durante más de 125 años han protegido a viudas y huérfanos, han defendido la libertad, han peleado contra la injusticia y han servido a su prójimo. Son los Caballeros de Colón. Hoy en día es la organización fraternal católica más grande, con 1.8 millones de miembros en 13 diferentes países. Desde su fundación, los Caballeros se han convertido en una de las compañías de seguros más grande y mejor calificada del mundo. Tienen un crecimiento impresionante para ser una organización de raíces humildes. En el siglo XIX, los inmigrantes católicos comenzaron a llegar en masa a Estados Unidos. Con frecuencia no eran bienvenidos en la sociedad estadounidense.
One of the perennial questions in the 19th century was concerning whether the immigrants coming to America from Catholic countries could be faithful Catholics and at the same time loyal Americans. That sparks a conflict, a struggle, if you will, that's going to last much of the 19th century.
Catholics were often ostracized in communities across the United States. Their churches were burned or graffitied. You really are dealing with a visceral anti-Catholicism.
Pero incluso sin este prejuicio y temor de la mayoría protestante, la población inmigrante católica ya estaba en estado de crisis.
They're working in the most difficult jobs, the most dangerous jobs. People get tuberculosis, people have industrial accidents, people have heart attacks, they drop dead. So this is long before unions, this is long before workers' compensation, this is long before any kind of safety net exists.
Los católicos también eran excluidos de la membresía en muchas sociedades de beneficios mutuos. Esto quiere decir que los esposos y los padres no tenían ningún medio para proteger a su familia en caso de fallecimiento prematuro. Muchas viudas con sus hijos se encontraban condenadas a la miseria y a la ruina.
If you could not support your children, the law, the probate court would come in and take your children and farm them out. They would literally take children away.
Fue exactamente esta deprimente situación la que impulsó a un joven sacerdote a entrar en acción. El venerable siervo de Dios, el padre Michael McGivney, era el sacerdote asistente en la iglesia de St. Mary en New Haven, Connecticut. Estaba profundamente preocupado por las presiones que desgarraban a las familias de inmigrantes católicos. El 2 de octubre de 1881 organizó una reunión de hombres católicos locales en el sótano de su iglesia. Compartió con ellos su visión de un grupo fraternal católico basado en los principios espirituales de caridad y unidad.
Christopher Columbus is seen in the 19th century as in part an evangelizer. He brought not only the European settlements, but he brought the gospel. He brought the Catholic faith. Also, the term knights focused on what we would call today the knightly virtues, being there to defend the weak, helping those in need, defending the Catholic Church.
The Knights of Columbus from its very first was an effort to make sure that women and children who became widows and orphans did not, in addition, have to suffer becoming destitute.
And the Knights became chief defenders of Catholics in that time period. So all these newly arrived immigrants saw the Knights as protection against prejudice. And that was a very, very powerful lure.
La popularidad de los caballeros muy pronto creció a nivel internacional. Antes del principio del nuevo siglo, los caballeros habían llegado hasta Canadá, estableciendo el primer consejo en Montreal. James Guardían, exalcalde de la ciudad, fungió como el primer gran caballero.
Well, the Knights came to Canada in 1897 in Montreal, and since then we have expanded throughout the country in every 10 provinces. There is a Canadian connection to Father McGivney because he studied in Saint-Hyacinthe, Quebec. There was a seminary there, and he studied there for a year. Father McGivney's presence in Canada could be related to years after, and I'm sure that helped in the growth of the order in Canada.
Within 25 years of the founding, we had councils in every single state of the Union and nearly all of the provinces of Canada, and had councils as well in Mexico and in the Philippines.
Al tiempo que se expandían por todo el mundo, los caballeros seguían defendiendo el papel de los católicos en la vida pública estadounidense. En 1904, los caballeros donaron $50,000 para establecer una cátedra de historia en la Universidad Católica de América. Fue la primera de muchas ocasiones en la que los caballeros responderían a las necesidades de la Iglesia. Pero los caballeros de Colón estaban igualmente dispuestos a responder a las necesidades de su país. La creación del cuarto grado lo dejó muy claro.
So the fourth degree becomes the patriotic aspect of the Knights of Columbus. The sword becomes very important in the regalia of the Knights of Columbus as the symbol of the willingness of the knight to defend his community, defend his church, defend those who are in need.
The Knights of Columbus lobbied Congress to memorialize Columbus in Washington, D.C. The summer of 1912, there was a huge dedication of it. President Taft was there, the Supreme Court, members of Congress, and 20,000 knights paraded through Washington. And it was a huge affirmation of their arrival in America.
Pero muy pronto los católicos de América se enfrentaron a un nuevo desafío. Cuando Estados Unidos declaró la guerra a Alemania en 1917, el patriotismo de los caballeros se puso realmente a prueba.
There was a lot of belief among some sectors of the country that Catholics weren't too interested in fighting this war. Why? Well, because a lot of Catholics were German, and here we are fighting Germany. An overwhelming number of Catholics were Irish American. We're going to fight with the British who have done all this to the Irish.
No solo miles de católicos lucharon valerosamente, sino que Caballeros de Colón extendió su labor caritativa durante la guerra. A petición del presidente Woodrow Wilson, los caballeros crearon centros recreativos para los soldados. Estos lugares de reposo y relajación que llegaron a ser tan populares fueron conocidos como cabañas de CDC.
The theme was everybody welcome, everything free. And everybody meant everybody. We didn't draw a color line, we didn't draw a religion line. So men could come in and have a cup of coffee with some friends or make some new friends, play cards, write a letter to their families, and basically have the wholesome environment and safe haven that the soldiers at the front needed.
Los soldados regresaron a casa. La guerra había terminado, pero la labor de los Caballeros de Colón no. Por medio de un programa de educación gratuito y una bolsa de trabajo, los caballeros colocaron a más de 300,000 veteranos de guerra en empleos en todo el país. Mientras tanto, las cabañas de los Caballeros de Colón en Europa habían atraído la atención del Vaticano.
Pope Benedict saw the impact of the cases of the Knights of Columbus hut movement. A delegation of knights went over to the Vatican, and the Pope said, "This really works, and you were extraordinarily successful. I want you to do some stuff in Rome for me."
El Papa pidió a los caballeros que trabajasen con la juventud de Roma que enfrentaba los numerosos problemas sociales creados por la Primera Guerra Mundial en Italia. Los caballeros le respondieron construyendo 5 centros recreativos de acceso gratuito para los jóvenes. Los centros recreativos siguen abiertos hoy en día. A medida que los centros recreativos en Roma estrechaban los vínculos entre los caballeros y los romanos a través de los deportes, un número creciente de caballeros de las ligas mayores se dedicaron a conectar a los católicos con su país a través del pasatiempo de América.
Well, I think everyone has played a little baseball. That's not true for football. That's not true for basketball. It's not true for tennis, and it's certainly not true for golf. But baseball, everyone has touched it. And I think that's one reason why it's woven into the fabric of life and of the country.
Algunas de las primeras leyendas del béisbol que fueron importantes caballeros de Colón son James Henry O'Rourke, el primer jugador que bateó de hit en la Liga Nacional; Ed Walsh, de los Chicago White Sox, quien tiene el récord del promedio más bajo de carreras limpias permitidas; Big Bill Deneen, de los Boston Americans, se convirtió en el héroe de la primera Serie Mundial moderna en 1903 al ganar el juego final sin permitir una sola carrera. Fred Clark fue el jugador estrella de los Champions Pittsburgh Pirates en 1909. Johnny Evers fue pionero del doble play durante su carrera reconocida en el Salón de la Fama con los Chicago Cubs. El parador en corto de Baltimore, Huey Jennings, batió más de 400 en 1896 en su trayectoria hacia el Salón de la Fama. El gran jugador y entrenador John McGraw es otro caballero de Colón cuyo legado continúa en Cooperstown. Pero ninguna estrella del béisbol podría compararse con el impacto de El Gran Bambino.
Babe Ruth was so much larger than life that it's hard for us to really understand his role. He was enormous. He was hitting more home runs than whole teams were hitting. He totally changed the game of baseball. And he was Catholic. And he joined the Knights when he was still with the Boston Red Sox. And he remained a Knight for the rest of his, for the rest of his life. And to see that here was this player who was, not afraid to say, I'm Catholic, and not afraid to say, hey, I'm a Knight of Columbus.
Babe Ruth was this rather colorful man who could hit home runs, who could also pitch, who might have been as good a player as ever played the game. And he had a personality from those who followed him that was unbelievable. And then his impact on the country was so great. I remember my father taking my mother. She was about 18 years old, and she had come over from Ireland. They were courting, and he said, you must see Babe Ruth. And he took her to a ball game. She had no idea of what was going on. But that was the impact of Babe Ruth.
The Knights of Columbus has attracted men in all professions. And we're especially proud that we have in our history members who, like Floyd Patterson, or Connie Mack, or Vince Lombardi, been great figures and leaders in athletics.
I think it's most important to realize that a leader does not exist in the abstract, but is judged rather in the terms of what he does in a specific situation.
Following World War I, a lot of historians had begun to suggest that the history of America was just the history of Anglo-Saxons. The Knights of Columbus said, wait a minute, that's just not the case. So, among other things, the Knights of Columbus published a monograph by W.E.B. Du Bois on the contributions that black Americans had made to the development of the country, and by a fellow named George Cohen, who talked about the contributions that Jews had made to the development of America, plus many others.
The Knights of Columbus did whatever was necessary to make sure that all people were treated equal, irregardless to the color line, whatever their station in life was. This is what Christ did. And that's what makes me really very proud to be a member of the Knights of Columbus.
La defensa de las minorías por parte de los caballeros y la oposición a la persecución religiosa en la década de los años 20 llegó hasta México durante un periodo de violencia anticatólica respaldada por el gobierno.
The Mexican government was violently anti-clerical and went through a series of very repressive periods against the Catholic Church. Not just closing churches, but shooting, hanging, murdering priests and Catholics.
The Knights of Columbus made it their business to try to demand that the American government do what it could to influence the Mexican government, cut it out, stop killing people, stop persecuting the church. The Knights of Columbus, including the Supreme Knight, met with President Coolidge in 1926, pounded the table, said, we've got to do something about this.
El Papa Pío XI emitió una encíclica instando a la resistencia pacífica y alabando a los caballeros por defender la fe en México. La presión de los caballeros y de otros católicos de Estados Unidos ayudó a cambiar la política de no intervención de Washington, lo que llevó al final del conflicto en 1929. Mientras que los caballeros estaban orgullosos de que su cabildeo ante el gobierno estadounidense había marcado una diferencia, el Ku Klux Klan resurgió para combatir contra la labor de los caballeros por los católicos mexicanos, argumentando que los católicos de América obtenían demasiado poder.
And the Ku Klux Klan used this as evidence of how the Knights were trying to take over the government. Here they are, they're trying to tell our government what to do in foreign policy, and they used that in the Al Smith campaign in 1928.
The campaign of Governor Al Smith for president raises some very dramatic issues for the Knights of Columbus. First of all, Al Smith is a member of the Knights of Columbus, has been a very successful governor. Then the question arises, are Catholics going to be fully accepted in the national life? And can they actually offer seriously a candidate for president?
He was a lifelong member of the Knights of Columbus. He was truly a man of the people, and he wanted to give back. He got into politics through his affiliation with the Catholic Church. So looking out for the little guy, looking out for women, looking out for children. He was a very compassionate man. And to get out there and see the real hatred, people burning crosses, people talking about the Pope moving into the White House. This was a deeply religious man. And he couldn't leave the hate and anger out there, and it did take a toll on him. When the election came, he lost. It was devastating.
La campaña presidencial de 1928 no fue la primera vez que los caballeros se habían enfrentado cara a cara con el Ku Klux Klan. En Oregón, los caballeros pelearon contra una ley apoyada por el Ku Klux Klan que prohibía la educación católica. Los caballeros financiaron una recusación de la Corte y en 1925 la Suprema Corte de Estados Unidos decretó que la ley era inconstitucional. Pero la plena aceptación de los católicos en la vida política estadounidense tendría que esperar. El anticatolicismo también fue la razón principal de que no hubiera ninguna relación diplomática formal entre Estados Unidos y el Vaticano desde 1867. Pero durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial, los caballeros de Colón sirvieron como vínculo diplomático vital entre el Vaticano y Washington. Enrico Galeazzi fue el representante de caballeros de Colón en Roma y también era amigo personal del Papa Pío XII.
Certamente la possibilità che avevano Galeazzi e il nipote del Papa di vedere il Papa tutti i giorni, anche più volte in un giorno, dava loro una possibilità sia di informare il Papa sia di essere informati di iniziative che venivano prese. Noi chiamavamo questa la terza sezione della Segreteria di Stato. Di fatto questo contatto consentì un rapporto che in quel momento non esisteva e non poteva esistere per ragioni diplomatico-politiche. Quindi dobbiamo dire la provvidenza si è servita di questo strumento per aiutare in fondo sia Roma e sia anche il Vaticano stesso, perché le condizioni di non comunicabilità erano nocive per gli uni e per gli altri.
Con el inicio de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, la comunicación entre el Papa y el gobierno de Estados Unidos fue cada vez más importante. De ella llegó a depender la supervivencia misma de la ciudad eterna.
Quello del 19 luglio ci furono ben 112 bombardieri che sganciarono 956 bombe, i morti furono quasi 1500, per cui fu un evento che ferì profondamente la città di Roma e i romani.
Il Papa decise altrettanto improvvisamente di lasciare il Vaticano, cosa che non accadeva molto di frequente in quei giorni, e di andare a San Lorenzo. È lì che ci stanno anche delle immagini, dei filmati molto belli e interessanti, e si vede il Papa nella posizione del Pastor Angelicus invocare la benedizione di Dio per le persone che stavano soffrendo. E fu un momento indubbiamente molto importante e toccante. era il vescovo di Roma che si recava dalla sua gente che stava soffrendo.
Si è presentato innanzitutto per confortare le persone, per pregare con loro, per benedirle, ma anche per aiutarle materialmente. È arrivato lì avendo delle buste con delle banconote che venivano date alle persone. Il Papa tornò in Vaticano con la tunica bianca macchiata di sangue.
En un esfuerzo por salvar Roma, el Papa Pío XII pidió a Galeazzi que fuese su emisario secreto ante el presidente estadounidense Franklin D. Roosevelt.
C'è la lettera che Pio XII manda al presidente Roosevelt durante gli anni della guerra cercando di far fare un armistizio con gli americani. Questa lettera è stata portata da mio nonno sotto i bombardamenti con 1000 difficoltà per l'appunto al presidente Roosevelt attraverso il cardinal Spellman.
Mientras que la carta nunca llegó a Roosevelt, sí recibió el mensaje y los aliados nunca bombardearon Roma de nuevo.
Gli interventi diretti del Papa attraverso Galeazzi e Spellman portarono al fatto che non ci furono altri bombardamenti, perlomeno nella città di Roma.
A medio mundo de distancia, en Filipinas, la Segunda Guerra Mundial provocaba estragos. Pero los horrores de la guerra solo fortalecieron a un pequeño contingente de caballeros filipinos. Contrabandearon con valentía suministros médicos para los sobrevivientes de la Marcha de la Muerte de Bataan, albergaron y alimentaron a los refugiados y proporcionaron lugares de descanso y esparcimiento para los soldados tanto estadounidenses como filipinos. Inspirados por el sacrificio de estos caballeros de Colón, miles de filipinos se unieron a la orden en los años posteriores a la guerra. El padre George Willman, un sacerdote jesuita estadounidense a quien muchos llaman el padre McGivney de Filipinas, dio la orden durante este periodo de extraordinario crecimiento. Mientras los caballeros de Colón se unían al mundo en la celebración del final de la guerra, la orden muy pronto enfrentaría a un nuevo enemigo para la libertad religiosa, el comunismo. Los caballeros de Colón lucharon contra la difusión de esta ideología atea, enfatizando las raíces cristianas de Estados Unidos. Inspirados por las inmortales palabras de Abraham Lincoln en su discurso de Gettysburg, los caballeros hicieron una campaña para agregar las palabras al amparo de Dios al juramento a la bandera.
In 1952, the Knights passed a resolution urging Congress to add "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance, so that everybody would say it. 1954, on Flag Day, Dwight D. Eisenhower signs legislation adding "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Adding the words "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance made clear that in the American system, the state is not absolute. There are other values higher than the authority of the state. In other words, as President John F. Kennedy said in his inaugural address, in America we believe that our rights come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God.
El impacto de Caballeros de Colón en la capital estadounidense no se limitó a la legislación. En 1959 se dedicó la Basílica del Santuario Nacional de la Inmaculada Concepción en Washington, D.C. Los Caballeros de Colón financiaron el majestuoso campanario del santuario. La inauguración del santuario anunció una nueva era para los católicos de Estados Unidos. La campaña presidencial de 1960 enfrentó a John F. Kennedy, un senador católico de Massachusetts, y Richard Nixon.
The anti-Catholic prejudice comes back a little bit, not nearly as viciously as it did against Al Smith, because between 1928 and 1960, Catholics have risen. You know, they've risen in American society, they've risen in American culture, they've risen in American politics. It's not so outlandish to think that there could be a Catholic president.
Aún así, Kennedy todavía enfrenta las antiguas preguntas de los anticatólicos. ¿Se puede ser un católico fiel y un estadounidense patriótico?
But if this election is decided on the basis that 40 million Americans lost their chance of being president on the day they were baptized, then it is the whole nation that will be the loser in the eyes of Catholics and non-Catholics around the world, in the eyes of history, and in the eyes of our own people.
My children can't imagine a day when a Catholic was a lesser citizen or considered somehow a peculiarity. The triumph of 1960, though, wasn't that the Catholic idea won, it was that the rest of America accepted. I'm very proud of the role my family played in trying to show the common ground that the American experiment has with the Catholic tradition.
John Kennedy, he received the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus in the Oval Office. And when Luke Hart walked into the room, he got up from his desk and he said, "Hello, Chief." He was a proud knight all his life.
Sargent Shriver, cuñado de John F. Kennedy y miembro de Caballeros de Colón, ayudó al presidente a encabezar la creación del Cuerpo de Paz, un nuevo programa que promovía el voluntariado internacional como camino a la paz mundial. El Cuerpo de Paz captó el compromiso con la justicia social de Caballeros de Colón.
The Peace Corps still resonates as a transformative expression of the American ideals. And, all of us in my family certainly are very proud of the role my dad played in that, a guy who was in the Knights of Columbus, a man who was trying to make the United States government believe in the best in humanity, believe in the values of the human spirit, believe in the equality of human beings, not just in this country but around the world.
En 1968, la esposa de Sargent Shriver, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, lanzó las Olimpiadas Especiales con el objetivo de fomentar el respeto y la aceptación de la gente con discapacidades intelectuales. Las Olimpiadas Especiales encontraron un socio cercano en Caballeros de Colón.
People with intellectual disabilities are still very vulnerable, very much outside the mainstream, very much at the margins of society. The Knights took a chance to look at a person with Down syndrome who's 12 years old and say, "I believe in you, I'm going to give money to you, I'm going to give my time to you, I'm going to give my energy to you, you are important." That takes a person willing to take a chance. The Knights took a chance.
El idealismo de las iniciativas como el Cuerpo de Paz y las Olimpiadas Especiales fue emblemático de la superioridad moral de Estados Unidos en la Guerra Fría. La oposición al comunismo, tanto de Washington como de la Santa Sede, ayudaría a crear una nueva era en las relaciones de Estados Unidos con el Vaticano.
Ronald Reagan and John Paul II had a great community of interest. Remember, they were practically the only people in the world who believed that the Soviet Union not only should fall apart, but that it would.
Ronald Reagan, my father, had a father who was a Knights of the Columbus member. He understood history. He understood the importance of the Knights of Columbus. He understood the importance of the relationship and having a relationship with the Pope at the time, Pope John Paul. I think he inherently understood that the road to those people being free in the Eastern Bloc countries was going to come through Poland. And in order for it to come through Poland, it had to go through Pope John Paul.
Al tiempo que el movimiento de solidaridad en Polonia luchaba contra la opresión del comunismo, Caballeros de Colón ofrecía un apoyo concreto.
The Knights of Columbus Hall in Boston was where we organized our canned good drive, food. People showed up with financial contributions. All of that went directly to Gdansk shipyard later for the striking workers. I used to talk to John Paul II about this often, and he used to say, that's the struggle wasn't just a struggle for the people of Poland. It was a struggle for human rights for people all across the world, and I like to think that the Knights of Columbus played a big part of that as well.
We hope and we pray today for a time when the people of Poland and all of the peoples on earth will join the people of America in celebrating the joys of freedom and speak together in pride and dignity of the wheat that grows on stones. God bless you and thank you very much.
At our 100th anniversary convention in Hartford, President Reagan came and addressed our delegates. Also, the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Casaroli, was there, and the President and the Cardinal had a private meeting in which groundwork was laid to move forward with this diplomatic relationship between the United States and the Holy See.
It's not just about diplomacy. This is about human rights. This is about civil rights. This is about social and economic justice. Everybody wins. You know, the White House wins, the Vatican wins.
Con vínculos cada vez más estrechos con el Vaticano, el apoyo de Caballeros se globaliza. En 1975, los Caballeros acordaron financiar las transmisiones vía satélite de los eventos principales del Vaticano.
We've done that for the Christmas Midnight Mass, the Easter week services, the funerals of the popes. We've done that, and we've done the installation masses. The Holy Father have been brought.
The Knights of Columbus also later decided to support satellite downlink costs for countries that couldn't otherwise afford to have access to this signal from the Vatican. For many countries, that signal would not have reached them without the help of the Knights of Columbus.
Dal 1980 in poi i Cavalieri Colombo hanno cominciato a collaborare in modo particolare con la fabbrica di San Pietro, con la Basilica di San Pietro, nel restaurare delle opere che avevano bisogno di interventi. Quindi noi abbiamo sponsorizzato dei lavori che sono stati, oserei dire, quasi epocali, quali per esempio il restauro della facciata di San Pietro nel 1985.
Restaurando il Tempio, noi in qualche modo diamo questo messaggio: è tutta la Chiesa che deve ringiovanire. È tutta la Chiesa che deve continuamente ritornare al Signore con sempre maggiore coerenza, con sempre maggiore entusiasmo, quindi con un volto sempre più giovane.
Al pasar los años, los Caballeros han seguido financiando restauraciones importantes que incluyen las estatuas de San Pedro y San Pablo en la escalinata de San Pedro, así como el atrio de Maderno, a la entrada de la basílica.
One of the keys of our success, the Knights of Columbus, is that we don't just bring them in, but we bring them in, we put them to work. I think this was the dream of Father McGivney. I think that was what he had in mind, is to get these men to become better Catholics, better citizens, better family men.
El atractivo de los Caballeros de Colón ha seguido creciendo más allá de su sólida presencia en los Estados Unidos y en Canadá. En Filipinas, los Caballeros son la agencia de acción católica oficial de la Iglesia y juegan un papel prominente en la creación de una cultura de vida, sirviendo a los pobres y apoyando la educación de los jóvenes. A través de su trabajo en México y en Latinoamérica, los Caballeros de Colón buscan cumplir el sueño de Juan Pablo II de un continente americano unido.
So by establishing the Knight of Columbus in Mexico, and not only in Mexico, but in entire Latin America, what we are trying to create is one continent, the one America that John Paul II talked about, the one Christian hemisphere, because that's the future of the Church.
En 2009, ese espíritu de unidad estuvo presente en el primer Congreso Mariano Internacional sobre Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. Fue un evento auspiciado por Caballeros de Colón para incrementar la fe y la unidad en todo el continente americano.
From Canada to Argentina, we are called to present the message of Our Lady of Guadalupe as the mother of a civilization of love. Our Lady of Guadalupe points us to her Son, but she points us also to unity in her Son. And for Catholics, this unity must transcend all political and cultural borders.
En 2006, los caballeros se expandieron a Polonia, cumpliendo el deseo del Papa Juan Pablo II.
Looking at a country in which the history and tradition of the Catholic Church is so strong and the faith is so vibrant and dynamic today, Poland was a natural for Knights of Columbus to begin a new chapter in our expansion and growth.
En todo el mundo, los caballeros trabajan incansablemente para promover el valor del servicio al prójimo. El libro más vendido del Caballero Supremo, Carl Anderson, A Civilization of Love, What Every Catholic Can Do to Transform the World, Una civilización del amor, lo que todo católico puede hacer para transformar el mundo, presentó este modelo de fe y caridad ante el público mundial.
We have within us the capacities of wisdom and virtue. With these gifts, and with the help of God's grace, we can build a civilization worthy of the human person. I suggest that this is not pious idealism, but a concrete proposal for action. The Knights of Columbus have provided countless examples of the way in which a caring and humane society can be built precisely on the principles of faith, hope, and charity. We are called to be a light for the world and salt of the earth, and by personal example to influence culture. It is an attitude toward life and a way of life that creates the possibility of a real bridge that transcends centuries-old cultural and religious differences. It is a profound meditation upon the admonition of Jesus that the love of God and the love of neighbor as oneself is the true and highest form of human vocation.
La visión del padre McGivney de Caballeros de Colón como sociedad de beneficios fraternales que protegía a las familias católicas ha impulsado el programa de seguros de la Orden para alcanzar un éxito sin par. Con más de $80,000 millones en seguros vigentes, no existe ninguna aseguradora mejor calificada en el norte de América que Caballeros de Colón. La solidez de las sensatas inversiones permite que Caballeros de Colón no solo asegure a su familia, sino que también cumpla con su misión caritativa.
The first principle of the Knights of Columbus is charity. And over the history of the Knights, we have been able to respond to some very catastrophic events. Going back as early as 1906 with the great San Francisco earthquake and fire, the Knights launched a national campaign to raise money to help rebuild the city of San Francisco. Then nearly a century later, when Hurricanes Katrina and Rita struck the Gulf states, Knights of Columbus were there on the ground very soon after, helping families dig out from the rubble, helping Catholic churches, helping Catholic schools, providing scholarships for students, helping reunite families.
There were Knights of Columbus halls everywhere that were turned into soup kitchens and places to feed people who had been displaced by the storm. Others were used as emergency command centers for police and emergency rescue people.
I always remember the morning of 9/11, being in my office, getting the news that something had happened in New York, turning the television on, calling in my fellow officers, and watching as the plane hit the second building. We decided right then that the Knights of Columbus had to do something to help. And from the Supreme Council, the very next day, we established a program that we called the Heroes Fund.
And so what we did was create a fund eventually more than $1.25 million to help the families of the men and women in the police and fire and emergency response units who died that day in the line of duty.
We knew that many of those families would be in need of immediate assistance. Insurance, government aid, and other programs would take weeks, months, maybe even years to reach these families. But through our network of agents, we were able to begin to deliver checks to the families of deceased firemen and policemen, rescuers, beginning that same Friday.
God was present in the many police officers, firefighters, and rescue workers who went into that building. Greater love than this has no man than to lay down his life for one's friend. And many of those people were not friends, but they gave of themselves. And I think that's really what the Knights are doing also. The creation of the Heroes Fund is really a response from the Knights of Columbus of what they're really based on, living out the gospel of love.
Muchos de los miembros del personal de emergencia fueron miembros de Caballeros de Colón. Entre ellos estaba el capitán Al Fuentes.
On a fateful day of 9/11, I was the acting battalion chief of the FDNY Marine Division. And I survived. There's no doubt that I am a different person from that morning till today. I know that when I raise my flag, it's in memory of all my friends that died on 9/11. What I have been given is another chance in life. I have come to understand what giving is all about. I need to, and I will give back. It is what the Knights of Columbus have always shown me for 38 years, and that's why I am a member of the Knights of Columbus.
Al igual que en la Primera y la Segunda Guerra Mundial, los Caballeros de Colón una vez más se unieron para apoyar a los que defendían a su país. Como parte de su sólido apoyo a la arquidiócesis para los servicios militares, los caballeros también han impreso y distribuido más de 500,000 libros de oración, y además han brindado apoyo espiritual a los capellanes y los soldados en el campo de batalla.
Knights of Columbus, with the Catholic chaplains, have to provide spiritual assistance in a wartime situation, which means trying to meet the needs of Catholics who might be spread out in a country like Afghanistan in numerous small bases, trying to respond to their needs even though they're under fire or they're under attack. Certainly in Iraq, the presence of the Knights was very evident. I visited at least 2 councils there in Baghdad, both of which were the backbones of the Catholic community there. Obviously, it is a war situation, and so the support that the Brother Knights give to each other, and also the spirit that they infuse in their whole unit, immediately becomes apparent.
When I got to Afghanistan, one of our members, his home council, sent several hundred pair of sweatpants, because Bagram has a huge hospital there, and the soldiers would come in with their uniforms cut off or blown off or whatever, and so they could have something comfortable to be in while they were in the hospital. Our home council really worked hard to gather, I think it was well over 500 school supply sets, which included notebooks, pencils, erasers, markers. We were able to distribute these school supplies out to hundreds of little kids. At the heart of what a soldier does is service, and charitable service is also what's at the heart of the Knights and in the Catholic faith.
Hace casi 130 años, una banda de hermanos, muchos de ellos veteranos de la Guerra Civil, ayudaron al padre Michael McGivney a fundar Caballeros de Colón. Hoy en día, esa banda de hermanos ha crecido hasta reunir a más de 1.8 millones de hombres en todo el mundo. Los tiempos han cambiado. Los necesitados han cambiado. La misión nunca cambia. Estamos ahí para ayudar a aquellos que nos necesitan más. Esta banda de hermanos, estos Caballeros de Colón, son el guardián de nuestro hermano.